Day 31 is Canvas. Now, what I did was I went to my dollar store, this was a few months ago, and I grabbed some of these canvases. They're exactly 12 by 12, and they were $2 a piece. Now, because they were from the dollar store, I wasn't convinced that they were gesso prepared, so I did grab my white gesso and I prepared my canvas. Now, I did use my heat tool a little bit, but mainly I just painted the background with my white gesso because this time I wanted the white gesso. And then I just walked away. I let it dry a few hours before I kept moving. I have to say, when you do these mixed medias layout, it takes a lot of patience. So it's almost like, okay, I'm going to do one part of it, then I'm going to walk away and let it dry for a few hours. Like this part here, these were actually some pattern papers that we put together during the last live, and I said I was going to use it, for some of the upcoming layouts, and I decided to use this bunch of scrap pattern paper, and they were all these nice shades of blues, and I'm going to stick them using Mod Podge on the canvas. Now, the first thing I did was take some of these pattern papers and just cut them down because a lot of them were big pieces of scraps. Then I just start making like a collage using the different pattern papers. Now, I found that they stuck better to each other if I kind of prepped it. So if I put some Mod Podge on the back of the pattern paper and then I put Mod Podge over top. Now, I did have a few sheets of pattern papers that had a little bit of color, and I actually like that. This sheet in particular had circles, and it had different shades of blues and pinks and oranges, and I decided to cut it into about a 3/4 inch strip, 1 inch strip, and then I'm just putting it randomly on the layout. I put some vertically and some horizontally. Then I also had this pattern paper that had a lot of the colors that are in the circles and also some blues in it. So I'm going to put a few pieces of that pattern paper just to add some color. Now, once I had all this down, I can tell you I almost didn't want to do what I was going to do next because I really liked the background, but it also gave me an idea. I think the next page I'm going to do it on a layout and with less mixed media. Once I had all the pattern papers that I wanted to use, I just made sure that I had a nice coat of Mod Podge over the whole thing. Then I started bringing more mixed media stuff that I might want to use while I was waiting for this to dry. But I left it there and I went for an hour walk. Just because there were so many pattern papers and so many layers, I wanted to make sure that it was completely dry. I think that's the main thing that you have to remember with these mixed media, whether it's a layout or these canvases, is to give stuff time to dry properly in between coats. One of the supplies that I'm going to keep around is the Mod Podge because I like putting Mod Podge between some layers because, stuff like paint and that kind of stuff, it's water soluble. So if you try to do another wet medium on top of water soluble stuff, it's going to run. The mist, all those supplies are water soluble. So what I do is I let it dry and then I put a coat of Mod Podge and it seals that first layer so that you can do more wet mediums and without it smudging. Now this was the part where I was like, no, I don't want to keep going with the mixed media. I'm covering some of the pattern paper, but that's the whole point of this, is that you put a bunch of pattern papers and then you put paint over top, but it's not concentrated paint. It's paint that I diluted with a bunch of water, so making it more like a paint wash. So what you're doing at this point is creating textures and layers. So the pattern paper, because I'm gluing one on top of the other, you're getting a lot of texture. Then by putting the coat of white wash paint, I'm pushing some of the stuff more into the background, and then I'm putting different stuff on top of it. So at this point, I went and got some rub-ons. These are some rub-ons from Stampin' Up. They don't even make them anymore. They're probably 20 years old and they still work amazingly. So I grabbed one of these sheets and I'm just going to add rub-ons directly onto the canvas. Now, at some point you'll see, like right now, as I'm doing the rub-on, I'm making sure that most of it is coming off from the rub-on because it's kind of in the layer that's going to be one of the furthest layers in the back. So I want it to be very dark so that you'll be able to see just a little bit of all these layers popping through. Then I had one of those distress paints, which I absolutely love. It just has a little foam on the top, and I'm painting the edges of my canvas. I don't want it to be white, so I just put the first layer and I'm waiting for this to dry, because after I did the rub-on, I put another paint of whitewash to the background. Now I put another squirt of paint in my little paint tray here, but instead of diluting it, I'm using the paint in its entire strength, and I'm taking some templates and I'm making texture again onto my layout and some color. This is definitely a messy layout, but it's fun once in a while just to take all your supplies that you've been gathering, around and using them on a layout. So another thing I do is I try to make sure to dry a lot of the layers in between some of the mixed media that I put down. So I put down that white paint. I made sure it was pretty dry. Then I went to get some white mist, and then I'm going to take a, I think it's called Evergreen Bow from Tim Holtz, and I'm just going to directly spray on the layout, and then at this point I'm going to walk away and let it dry again. But before I do that, I'm going to add my second layer of the paint on the side of the canvas. And even though that heat tool works really well, the best thing I found for mixed media is just walking away. So whenever you do one of these layouts or one of these canvases, it's not something that you can, go to your scrap room and say, I'm going to get this done in an hour or so, and then it'll be done. It's not like a regular layout. There's a lot of putting a layer of mixed media stuff and then walking away and letting it dry on its own. So now the next layer of mixed media I'm going to do is going to be a mixture of using my stamp sets and some StazOn ink, and also I had some little roll-on rub-ons. I'm putting them all over the layout. This is some rub-ons that I use for something like this, where I don't care if it's just part of the rub-on that goes on the canvas. It actually looks better if it's just parts of the rub-on. Then I have these white rub-ons that I'm just putting again here, there, and everywhere. And it's all about, at the end, there's going to be so much different mixed media stuff. You got, some paints, and you got some mist, and then you got some stamping, some rub-ons, some using stencils with paint. There is so much going on, and it creates so much interest to the background. Now I'm going to take that pink dauber that I used to paint the sides, and I'm going to bring it up a little bit because there was quite a bit of white on the side of the canvas, and I want that to be colored. So I'm using that same color. I'm just doing it in, small layers so that it has time to dry in between. Once the canvas is at a spot where I really like it, the next thing is going to be to add some modeling paste. The modeling paste I have is a modeling paste by Heidi Swapp, and I've had it for years, and it's kind of a shimmery aqua color modeling paste, and it goes really well with the background. I am going to use one of my arrow templates, and then I kind of take a look at the whole canvas and I'm trying to see what else I can add, and then I decided to add some words using some rub-ons. And then I have this mixed media pen, and I'm just outlining the words very roughly so that the words stand out. Now this is a picture of the Circle Line boat tour that you can take in New York, and we had done that. This was in 2012, and I just like the fact that you can see Lady Liberty in the background. And so that's going to be the picture I'm going to use, and I'm not going to add any other die cuts or anything like that because my canvas has all sort of the decoration it needs. It's the showstopper. So I'm just going to add the photo, and that's going to complete this layout. So this was supposed to be our last day, but in light of everything that's going on, I decided to go a little longer. So you'll get a few more videos. I don't know how many yet, but just a few more. I am going to take April 1st off, but as of April 2nd, we'll have a few more videos, maybe every second day for, a few videos. But that's 31 pages, 31 videos in 1 month, in 31 days. And I want to thank you so much for your support.